get on there.
All right, we will kick off the June 6th work session with a presentation by our Public Works Director, Peter Passarelli, on the SCADA, which stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System, which we've been talking about for about 4 years now. So hopefully it's coming to fruition.
Thank you, Mayor Beatty, Council President Nicodemus, and council members. I am Peter Passarelli. I'm the Public Works Director. And as the mayor mentioned, I'm here tonight this afternoon to give you an update on our SCADA system. So. Oh. Well, as Mayor Beatty mentioned, SCADA stands for Supervisory Control and Automated Data Acquisition. And it's the system that the city uses to remotely monitor and operate its water distribution and water treatment processes, as well as our pump stations that we have for our sanitary sewer system. Thanks, Scott. So it's an industrial control tool that's common in water and wastewater industries, and as well as lots of other industries. The city, we use it to sort of, as I said, to monitor and operate our system. It also captures sort of the real-time information in the system, and we can use it to build reports, historical reports on water consumption, pumping demands on certain pumps, pumping information at our wastewater system, at our wastewater pump stations. Then we can get all that information, and we can use it for planning purposes to identify problems that we might have in the system. And it's a tool that is you can't get by without right now. It allows us to interact directly with our pumps and valves and motors remotely from a computer system or an iPad. And when we do have a malfunction or something go wrong in the system, it will send an alarm to the team, and they will be able to go out and respond to that. Here's just a quick picture of what our overview screen for our water system looks like. And you can see on there, it shows the different concrete and elevated reservoirs and Stanley reservoirs that we have, the different pressure zones that exist in the city, and then all of the wells and treatment processes. And at this snapshot in time, it will show you what the elevation of water is in those storage facilities, how much water is pumping from a well, gallons per minute, and identifies where we might be having issues and how we might need to manage and change things around. A really useful tool, like I said. The city first installed the SCADA system that we have back in the early 90s. And we really haven't done any major upgrades to that system until about now. When I first got here, I recognized that we hadn't made any significant investments in that SCADA system. So what we did is we started down a path to get us to where we are, hopefully tonight, where we're going to award a contract for construction to upgrade our system. So we started off working with Tetra Tech to develop a SCADA master plan, and that document helped us identify what were the future requirements of the system that we wanted to put into place to replace what we have now. So it took a look at the network architecture that's in the system. So we use, laptops and computers, and it's interconnected with our city servers and things of that nature. So it took a look at the network architecture, the cybersecurity components of it. We want to make sure that it's secure and nobody can can hack into the system. So we looked at all those items. We also looked at what were the opportunities to make improvements to the automation and controls components that we have out there that we use to operate the system. So we spent about a year doing that project, and in July of 2019, that was completed. And then at that point, we moved on to a design phase, and we went out for an RFQ to select an engineering firm to help us with that, and ended up selecting Tetra Tech to do that work. And they started that work in 2020, which is about 3.5 years ago. We ran into some bumps in the roads. One of the things that we had happen was we had COVID, which made it difficult for the team, the project team, to meet and get together to go out to the sites and review the existing conditions. We ended up having some long-term injuries that put some critical people out of the loop for a while that we had to wait on. We had a changeover in our IT manager that impacted the project as well, because the IT played a major component of the project. And then last year, we actually had the project manager retire from Tetra Tech suddenly with about a 2-week notice. That sort of put us behind. But we finally made it. I think we made it to the starting line, I'll call it now, because we've got a contract that I think we're going to hopefully award tonight. Initially, when we started down the path for this construction, for the upgrade, is we had broke the project down into 2 phases, a communications phase. So how's the system going to communicate back and forth within its network, and then also the automation and control and the actual programming of the SCADA software. We went out for a bid last spring in 2022 and failed to get any responsive bids, anybody bidding on it. So the team got back together and felt like, hey, what we need to really do is reconsolidate this project together and bid it out as one project, the communications and the automation and control component as one project. And we did that, but it took us about a year to get that all wrapped up and reconsolidated and do it as one project. We put the project out for bid in mid-March and received bids May 11th. We did have a couple of bid extensions because there was a lot of good questions that the contractors had related to the project, and they're trying to put together a good bid. We did receive a bid on May 11th from TSI Technical Service Industries, and for $1.9 million. That bid, though, was about $500,000 more than we expected. The staff report that I had put together sort of outlines some of the reasonings why. It seems like the electric work that we have as part of the project seemed to be a little bit higher than the team expected. It was the total value of all the work's about $800,000 for the electric piece, and we thought that was probably about $300,000 higher than what we expected. And then there's this inflationary impact that's impacted a lot of the electrical and automation control components that we're using. We saw it building out the sort of the network infrastructure of this system, working with the IT department and going out and purchasing some of the server systems and software there. But unfortunately, we saw that as it came down in the price here to about $1.9 million. We're expecting this work to take about 15 to 18 months once the contractor gets the notice to proceed. Yeah. So one of the things I did want to mention that we did is one of the biggest problems we've had with the system over the last 10 years is a communication piece, and the ability of that system to meet our expectations on being operational and providing a good communications network. So, when we were going through the master planning effort, we wanted to make sure that we were putting in a system that had some of the same levels of redundancy that you would expect for a public safety organization. So we've built and designed, we're designing a system and constructing a system that has redundancy in it, in that communications piece. And one of the things one of the buzzwords that came out of here was sort of the Internet of Things. So we're going to be, the system's going to work over the Internet as primarily with cybersecurity protections. And with backup with backup from a cellular wireless to wireless system as well. The system though is going to allow that remote management, allows the operators to access it from work directly from their office. If there's a problem, it'll pop up on their screen that there's an issue. They'll be able to look at it from a mobile device on a phone, on an iPad, and if they're at home on call, they can see what's happening on call. And actually, one of the things we've added, they'll be able to make adjustments. In the past, when there was an alarm, they had to drive in and make an adjustment if there was on certain alarms and check things. Here, they'll have a better grasp or better breadth of information coming to them to identify and troubleshoot issues that hopefully will reduce how much time they spend in the after hours coming in to check on things. And it's a centralized system. So they'll be able to manage it from any of those locations. So the communications redundancy that we put in is twofold here. So we've got our primary cellular wireless network that's going to be connected through our internet that'll speak to the SCADA server that we have at our public safety building. And then if that fails, if we have an internet outage, we'll still have a cellular wireless connection, and the different sites will be able to communicate back and forth over that cellular wireless radio that we've put in place. And we'll be able to do work. It will impact the ability to do some of the remote operations, but you'll see things on the screen. They'll just have to come in and respond if there is an alarm in those cases, if there's a communications failure. When we had gone out for bid originally, we had included a third means of communication using a 450 megahertz broadband radio, which is the current system that we have now. The system that we have in place relies on a broadband radio that talks from antenna to antenna, and we see a lot of issues in the spring and winter and fall when it's rainy and when it's wet, we end up having problems. We had included that as an additive alternate, and the cost of that actually came in at about $680,000. So we decided to reject that component of the bid. So we'll still have two means of communication, but not that third means. So if the internet and the cellular wireless radio failed, then in that case, we'll have to have somebody out on site to operate it remotely. But we've built in additional redundancy. Any questions? I think that's trying to be quick because I know there's a lot going on. I think Jen had a lot to talk about, so.
Peter, I'm really glad to see this project and seeing some resiliency built into the system. But I got to tell you, I heard cybersecurity mentioned once. I'd like to hear it mentioned 10 times because, there's just been so many instances of ransomware attacks on utilities and that kind of thing. And so could you give us a little bit more to chew on? I mean, is this something that's, a piece of firmware? Does it get updated on a periodic basis to deal with new ransomware attacks and, malware and all that kind of thing?
Well, so we have built, there's multiple firewalls that are built into the system that we worked with IT on. And our IT department will be providing those updates when we have a firmware update, those software updates, they'll be making those. But we have built in sort of multiple firewalls. There's sort of dual authentication that's required to access the SCADA systems. So if you're operating remotely, you need to have a certain login and certain permissions to access that have to be authenticated. No system is 100% secure unless it's completely sort of off the internet, off the system or completely separate. We spent a lot of time talking about this and weighed the pros and cons of what we're doing. And the ability to remotely operate and manage and have the information at the finger touch of the operators from home in the middle of the night meant much more than having a system that was completely disconnected from everything else. And we felt that the cybersecurity that we were building in with the firewalls to the system were more than sufficient and met and meet and I think exceed the sort of the current standards that are out there.
Just one follow-up. So does the vendor provide the security here and our IT people install it essentially?
So, I mean, there's a couple things there. So we do have firmware updates to hardware components.
Yeah.
So the vendor of that component would provide that to IT and IT would make those updates. We do have software. If there's software updates, our IT department will update those as well when necessary. And we've also gone through an extensive exercise in it determining what levels of permission different staff members can have for the system. So there's some checks and balances there. It's a really good question, but and an important one. So.
Okay, thank you.
Other folks have questions?
I have a quick question. So I'm familiar with another jurisdiction that had an issue with an electrical utility that turned off the power and it was unannounced. Their system did not have the capability to send an alert, and it was during a rainwater event, and so it washed out part of the construction that they were working on. What sort of precautions are in place should the electricity be cut completely and in a situation where we may not know?
So we have backup generation at many of our sites, and the sites that we don't have that at, that are important for the operations of our system, we have UPSs. So one of the things that we're doing as part of this project, we are increasing the sizes of those UPSs. I mean, currently we have like
What's a UPS?
uninterruptible power supply. It's a big battery.
Okay.
Or not necessarily a big battery, but it's a battery sized for, so you have something that component can operate off of for a period of time. So in some cases, we've increased the size of those UPSs from 30 minutes to up to 4 hours. And for example, at our well 5, which is at Water Tower Park on the backside of Water Tower Park, that facility also has a sensor in there that tells us how much water is in the water tower So if we have a power outage there, we actually have to run a big giant generator just for this little sensor because it's only got a 30-minute backup. And it's tough to get somebody to respond in 30 minutes and go out and diagnose what the problem is. So that means that a big generator has to come on to operate a little sensor. So what we've done is we've increased the size of that battery there. So if the power does go out, which it does, which we've had, I mean, over the past year, it's gone out maybe 2 or 3 times. That will provide us sufficient capacity to diagnose. And if it looks like there's an extended issue there and we don't need to operate the well, we can bring a small Honda portable generator
Okay,
to provide it. So,
thanks.
yeah.
And do we have any of these components running on solar at all?
I'm sorry,
Running on solar at all?
no, we don't have any of these components running on solar.
Solar.
Yeah.
Okay. And I remember a couple years ago when you were replacing one of the wells, well 8, well 1? 2? There were some supply chain issues that delayed that. Is that kind of stuff more predictable now, or is that still something that's going to be that's going to potentially slow this down?
I think there's still some long lead times on some of the electrical components. I think, though, it's not as bad as it was, but there's still some long lead times on some of the programmable logic controllers that we use to program to tell the system what we want it to do. There's some things there that take a little bit of time to get.
And in our packet, there's 2 in our consent agenda packet for later. There's 2 contracts. There's the big one that you're talking about here, and then there's one for construction.
So
Can you explain what?
Yeah, the second one is our construction management. So we're going to be working with Tetra Tech to be the project manager for this project, to sort of manage, to work with the contractor to make sure that the contractor is building the system to the specifications, that they're going through the project to make sure that they're providing all of the proper documentation, that they're building in that all of the specified equipment is being provided, that they're keeping up with the schedule, that they are putting together and providing documentation on the program to control narratives that they're building into the system that tells things when to turn off and turn on. That's something that we don't have internal staff capacity to manage. There's a skill set there that for this type of work that we need that additional expertise and assistance with. Generally, on some of the projects, I know on some of the other CIP projects, we'll see those construction services contracts for those. This one's probably a little bit higher because there's a little bit more complexity to it, and we want to make sure that we get it right because it's really a critical system.
Right. Okay. And and this is not exactly a SCADA question, but is monitoring water quality something that happens automatically, or is it something that a human has to go in and do however often?
You can put in items, mechanisms to monitor certain water characteristics or wastewater characteristics, depending on what you're doing. We do that with our chlorine, so we can track how much chlorine is being injected into the system to make sure that we're meeting our disinfection requirements. So that's an example. That's the one sort of chemical process that we have that we do that. much of the other water processes that we do that require somebody to take a sample and send it to the lab. But in some water utilities, there are other, because they're adding additional chemicals, there's that ability to test and get that information right away.
And I'm going to just jump in because we are at his time. And Jen made me promise that I would get her on the dais on time if you're able. So,
Well, you told me the clock is 5 minutes.
I know, but by mine, it's you got 30 seconds. But, yeah.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Professor, Doctor.
Way for people watching out there, agenda, I think it indicated that this was a 30 item and it's actually an hour long item. I mean, it may not take them, it may or may not take them an hour.
It'll take them an hour.
Yeah. Okay.
The background effects.
Ocean waves,
Ocean,
right?
yeah. Just neat. Thanks, Scott.
All right, have the city engineer and assistant city engineer to talk to us about SAFE and SSMP.
Thank you. We've got Steve Adams with us, and I'm Jennifer Garbely. And we're here to talk about the 2022 SAFE and SSMP program updates.
And I plan to be the silent partner, only answering questions if need be. Thank you.
So a quick little overview. Our SAFE program goal, when it was developed, was to finish priority 1 and 2 corridor improvements within a 20-year planning horizon. That's the overall arching goal. For our SAFE and SSMP program, major streets at a 75% or above on pavement condition index, which we call PCI. Deferred maintenance, no concrete goal set, but reconstruction of local streets should come after all preventative maintenance needs have been addressed, and the larger streets are brought up to over 70 PSI. That's the important part of that, 70. Prevent any street from deteriorating to the point of requiring reconstruction. Crack sealing and rehabilitation projects should be prioritized over reconstruction of already failed streets. And then complete a 10-year project. 10-year project sheets is what they called it. So here's what we have for our existing PSI. Our arterials is at a 68%
This was
PSI.
in 2022 or this?
2022. So this is in 2022. It did decrease, not by much. The previous year was 69. Collector stayed the same at 56. And our neighborhood and local streets have declined even more to 52. So we have anticipated this, and in our budget cycle this year, we have actually added increased budget for slurry seal, surface repair, and then also a bucket for residential asphalt repair, which you'll get to hear more about. So the SAFE program came back and it said, hey, we want to do it in a 9-year integrated program. Here is those matrix that the group came up with. 27.9 miles of sidewalk, 1 mile of paths and trails, 4 miles of bike lane, pave 19.5 miles of roadway, construct or repair 899. I don't know why we didn't say 900, but 899, I love it. ADA ramps, 78% of the 25-year SAFE program to complete. And then 82% implementation of the city's ADA transition plan and complete the city's original 10-year SSMP project list. So here's where the actuals are right now. Sidewalks, we've done about 6 miles, which is only about 22%. However, our paths, we've got 2.3 miles, which is way above. So that's one thing we're gonna have to think about as we move forward is we're building more paths instead of just sidewalk and bike lanes. So we might not actually hit our goals because we've kind of changed our parameters and what we would like to see within our city. Paved, we're at 6.9 miles, which is 35%. Bike lanes, 1.4. That's 35% complete to date. And then accessible ramps, 316, which is 35%.
And so that's all the work that was done with the first bond. And so being at 35% is about
It's
where you
actually,
want to be.
yeah, correct. And that's nothing that's happened this year, right? So that's all last year. Come in. So what do we've got upcoming for projects in design? We have Waverly South and 26th Avenue improvements. This is an in-house design. It's going to be designed by Hector and looked over with Jeff, our new project manager. We have Monroe Greenway getting ready to kick off. We have Harvey Street Safe. We just reviewed proposals. We'll be coming to you with a contract in July. And we have King Road under contract, which we're anticipating to start next year to build out. And then we have a grind and inlay project that's going to happen this summer.
This summer?
This summer.
Okay.
That's right. So let's start with Monroe Greenway. So previously we've talked about Monroe Greenway and all of these segments, A, B, C, 2Ds. We wanted to condense that down. So you've got East Monroe Greenway, and that is from 37th to Linwood, which is our ODOT project with Metro funds. Just reviewed the proposals. We'll be awarding that contract through ODOT as soon as it gets through their process. We then have Central Monroe Greenway, which is your piece on either side of 224 and then butts up against 7 Acres Apartments. We're currently working on an IGA with them to receive the 1.5 million to start that design work.
IGA with ODOT?
ODOT. Yep. And then you have the center there, the intersection 224 and Monroe, which is under design. And they're postponed it a little bit so they can do the paving. And where does the paving stretch from? Harrison?
They're doing design work all the way from 17th to Rusk Road, but budget constraints, they're only physically going to pave from 17th to 37th or through 37th.
Oh.
Okay. And then we have West Monroe Greenway, which is unfunded at the moment, is where we stand as far as the different segments. All right. So 2023 SSMP project. We decided we have this bucket of surface, residential surface repair that we want to start utilizing. So this summer, we're getting ready to put out to bid. We're going to go Jackson, Harrison, and Llewellyn from home basically to 44th Street. Then we're going to pick up kind of North Milwaukie, 40th Avenue, 41st, and 43rd from Johnson Creek to Roswell. These are getting a grind and inlay. So we're removing 2 inches and then we're putting back 2 inches. From limit to limit, straight up, just trying to get some nice asphalt down before those roads deteriorate even more and give them some structural strength. These are all residential streets. They're all local, and they are starting to fail. So we want to put on some asphalt to hopefully preserve that a little bit longer and start using this bucket we've created within our CIP.
I'll add to that on Jackson, east of home. It's the only one of the 3 streets that goes east of home. There's a development at the corner of Jackson and 52nd. I've been working with the developer on an agreement. He has to repave outside of his development already. And the agreement is to extend the grind and inlay all the way to home, and the city reimburses them for that cost. So Jackson will hopefully be paved all the way from 44th to 52nd with that little bit of work being added to it.
So we're looking at 1 mile of roadway being repaved this summer. In addition, slurry seal is going to happen this month. They're actually kicking off June 20th, 6.2 miles of slurry seal happening, which is exciting.
And do people who live in those areas know already, or is that?
Letters all been sent out. They have been notified. There's a website up and running.
Almost 1,000 letters were sent out last week.
Contractor's been real responsive, so quite excited. It's they're ready to go. So we finished crack sealing those streets, and then we're going to come back and slurry seal them, and that'll be complete before July 4th. We'll do it in 4 days, 6 miles. All right, next we have our Washington Street area improvements. We're getting final drawings this Friday. I'm excited. So we're gonna go out to bid as soon as we have one more look at those and make sure we don't have any other additional comments, which will be this month. And then we should be back to you for an award on that, either late July or early August. So this is 45 new ramps, or fixing ramps, either there's some new ramps and some repair ramps on this project. 1.2 miles of sidewalk and a mile of roadway that will get redone. Not to mention, there's also a bunch of utility work that's going to happen as well. So this is getting closer, and it's quite exciting to kick off this project for us. I think Tessie's getting nervous though, because she's going to have also Ardenwell North. Just after we get Washington, we're going to kick out also Ardenwell North improvements. 12 ramps will be getting repaired. We've got almost 1 mile of surface repair happening. This is a shared road concept. So we're not installing new sidewalk, but the entire roadway is ADA compliant for walking, which is quite exciting. So both Ardenwald and Washington has gone through our public engagement process. They are both a informed level of public engagement, but they each have done a open house pop-up at 60% design and received feedback. There's a project website. Letters of impact have all been mailed to all residents on both projects that are impacted. Tessie has done in-person meetings with anyone that has had conflicts. There's a construction impact letter in 5 languages that has been drafted up and ready and is accessible to them. We have new signs you might start seeing that we put up around the city that actually have our logo and a phone number on it. And they say either construction's coming soon or construction happening now. And they're huge. They're really big to catch people's eye, and they have an ability to contact us or getting on a mailing list if they need to, or an email list for additional information. So those are new. They have been out and about for the wastewater projects, if you happen to have seen them. So we've been moving them as we move the project.
Is that a wastewater project over on like 37th
Yep.
and King? Okay.
Yes. Yes, it is. They should be wrapping up the open trench this month, and then they have a lining work to do in July, and then we're complete with that. So that brings us to our up and coming citywide engineering projects. And I thought it would just be good to kind of see what's happening. So right now we've got our wastewater system improvements that is going on. Meek stormwater improvements is out to bid. We're expecting bids back the 22nd of June. I hope to turn around Washington area improvements within a couple weeks after receiving our final plans. And then Ardenwold North will follow after we get Washington out for bid. King Road is under contract for design. Harvey, like I said, is where you just reviewed proposals. So that will be under design. Monroe Street Greenway, we just reviewed proposals. That will be under. Locust Road, 40th and 42nd Avenue. We have a study going on that's at 42nd and King and 42nd and Harrison to figure out those two intersections and how they get impacted by a Monroe Greenway when it becomes official Greenway and we have to divert traffic onto Harrison. So we'll know a little bit more information before we go out for an actual consultant for full design. And then Waverly Heights is sewer reconfiguration is also out for proposal.
So the ones in Brown are being built this year? Is that right?
Are going to start
And the rest are
under design.
built next year or over the next couple of years? Or can you kind of walk through which ones you expect to be built which year or start construction which year?
I would say, so you would have Harvey that's going to start, you're going to design it this next year and it'll kick off construction next year. Waverly Heights would be the same.
I can mention the Monroe Greenway, I'm familiar with that. So the intersection itself, the construction is supposed to go out to bid in not till January 25, along with the mill and overlay of 224. So that'll be a 2025 project. And the Monroe East Greenway, once we get that designed, ODOT, it's going to take a few more things to get through ODOT, DOJ and whatnot to get the design under, but I'm thinking that will probably won't go into construction until 2025 also.
King Road should start next year, but I don't know if it'll complete in a year just because of how large the project is. All right, now we have our Milwaukee's RTP 2023 list. And I thought I would just give you a quick little update. So the last one was done in 2018. I was not part of that group, but during that 2018, we had all our SAFE projects identified. So a lot of these projects were including our SAFE program to it. This year, when I updated it, we don't have a new transportation system plan. So there wasn't any new projects really to add to the 2018.
So you might want to explain what the RTP is, because I'm not sure everybody watching knows.
So it's the Regional Transportation Plan. And this is just Milwaukee's projects. But overall, it's an arching between all of Metro. So it's all the cities within the Metro that put together their projects that they would like to seek federal funds for. So all of these projects have to be identified somewhere in a plan. So most of ours are in our transportation system plan. But we have our SAFE projects that weren't added yet to it because we hadn't done an update to our transportation system plan yet. So that's our additional scope here is from our ADA transition plan that we added an additional groupings to be able to get federal funds. So the main update on this for me was we had a lot of projects we actually finished. So we pulled them off of the list. For example, like Linwood and 43rd and 22nd Avenue. So those projects were removed from the list. We had a few projects that Milwaukie had nominated, but didn't necessarily belong to us. So Clackamas County took those on. There's a few projects in here that I would say are still, should be under ODOT's, but they do their list a little bit different than the cities do. So they asked us to keep them on our list at this time. And then I did a really look at some of the cost estimating and updated cost estimating for these projects within this program. This program changed completely. It was completely pulled onto a cloud database system. So we had to re-update every project in the system.
And so are we in a window now? Because I know the county and CPRD went to the county to ask them to add 3 things to the RTP. In fact, I think there's a hearing on that in the next week, or maybe it's happened already. So are we in a window now where everybody's updating their RTP? Is there a cycle that happens on, or how does that work?
Yeah, at this time, that cycle actually is closed for all the cities. All the cities have gotten all their information in. And it is now in the process of Metro reviewing all of the projects and asking if there's any additional questions and making sure all the information is correct on this new platform that they created. They will be, I think they just went to JPAC at the moment to get approval of all of the projects that has been created by all the cities and counties to bind. Is there any other additional questions?
I just appreciate you doing this. I think you tied it, but I just want to make sure everybody knows this is our CIP. So most of these projects are listed in our budget, and you'll see them there. So it's just a different way of prioritizing it. But you all, that's when you touch these, is through that process. We've talked about bringing forward the work of the COAB into this process, into our budget process, because it allows for you all to touch the projects before they're approved in the budget. So just trying to pull all these pieces together, but this is an incredible amount of work that Jen has done for the last 5 years, I think. And I really appreciate how much she and Peter have done in order to get us to this point.
Yeah, and the next one that I'm going to probably be looking for federal dollars is Railroad Avenue capacity improvements. It's a pretty sizable project, so we can't do it on our own without federal dollars. So that'll be the next one. We'll kind of be really reaching out there. Where can we get grants? Where can we, pull in some additional money to make that happen? Another one, sorry, is Kellogg.
Do you mind 1 second?
Mm-hmm.
I think Robert had a question.
Oh, sure. First of all, when I drive around and I see these projects, it just brings a smile on my face, especially the SAFE project. So thanks for that work. It's really good for the city. Washington Avenue, how long is that going to take?
To construct?
Yeah.
So it's going to take, it should be done by not this October, the following October is what I'm looking at. And the reason for that is, one, that lead time that we need for materials, right? So pipe is still actually an issue getting, depending on what size pipe you need. We have a culvert crossing as part of the Washington area improvements, and that has a window that we can actually do that work in. And I think it's like July 15th to like August 15th. So it's a short window. I'm probably not going to hit that this summer. So I'm going to have one more summer to be able to get that wrapped up and done. But all that utility work can get done in the winter. This is actually a really great project for contractors to kind of step in and take, because a lot of the work they can do through the winter. And it's just some of these smaller things like paving and this culvert work that can't get done in the winter.
Yeah, my concern about Washington is just the El Puente school. And
Sure.
that place can just get so congested during drop off and pickup time.
Yep.
That, I'm just worried about, construction activity there. So.
So one thing that we are putting in is this is a best value contract that we're going out for. And so one of the things we'll be asking the contractors is how are you going to deal with the school hours and what kind of public engagement and what kind of traffic control are you going to set up to maintain drop off and pickups?
Yeah. Okay, good,
So it is a priority.
good. Thank you.
And the only thing I wanted to add is that Metro's council will discuss the RTP on June 13th. There you go.
They will on June 13th.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. With the Ardenwald North project, you mentioned ADA stuff, right? Are they, so on 30th and Vanwater, are they gonna do any adjustments there? Because it really pulls up where they installed those new ADA ramps when it rains.
I believe that is part of it. So a lot of the project is to fix some of the drainage issues so people can't actually walk because there's puddles and things like that. So Tessie's really working hard to eliminate any drainage issues. We are missing a bunch of also catch basins or just haven't been installed or they're really small. And so we're upsizing to actual city standards, the catch basins. So a storm water is a big piece of that project.
I get a lot of questions and I tell them, hold
have to-
on, let me put on my engineering hat. Not.
I'll have to check with her to see if that actual corner is getting fixed, if it's within the boundaries of her project. If not, we'll figure out where to add it to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know that you need to answer this today, I guess, but maybe it's something that Counselor Savage can answer for us because she sits on the Metro committees at some point. But I always wonder what these things mean on the RTP. Fiscally constrained, federal and state share fiscally constrained. What do all those things mean? And if you don't feel,
I can answer it actually, because I set this one up. So there's really 3 brackets, and that's the first 3. You're fiscally constrained, means these are dollars that you are actually trying to get for these projects, and they are kind of budgeted in this kind of time frame. So you're trying to do them within that time frame. So you have those first 2 at the top. So strategic is a wish list. It's like, hey, if there happens to be additional funds, then here's what we'd like to throw it at. And then they told us about a new bucket, and that's these federal and state share ones that they haven't completely stated how they want to use it, but that's how I was able to lump the projects in there. So it was an additional bucket that we might be able to utilize. What else would you like to add?
The only other thing I would add is that the discussion at C4 leading up to sending this final list to Metro for JPAC discussion and for ultimate Metro Council or council discussion is to help give some guidance of where are the regionally significant projects that need to be in the queue. So, while this, I don't know how often this RTP list is up, it's every 5
Every
years.
5 years.
So it kind of gives like the queue for regionally significant plans. And as council knows, there's a lot of shifting that's happening with funding buckets and ODOT funding and prioritization and things like that. So it's been a lot of work behind the scenes that Jen and others have done. So I guess I'll second the thank yous.
So a good example of it was Kellogg Creek Dam removal was originally on the strategic plan. And this year I moved it up to a federally constricted because it's got money and so we can actually award it sooner. Additional funds.
great. Looks like a great list.
So that list though will get updated in the next one because we should have a new TSP. So
And will we have an opportunity to update it or we have to wait 5 years?
we have to wait 5 years. Yeah, we're not allowed to touch it. Sorry. But it might take us that long to get through our. Sorry.
The DSP?
Okay. Any other questions I can help you with tonight? I will be back in September for a CIP update, and hopefully we can talk about some things that are under construction.
So I guess if you're done, I do have a couple more questions. I just was, in the staff report, you said, well, I guess they're apples and oranges. I guess I'm trying to compare apples and oranges. I was surprised by what you said in the staff report about how many of our ramps are non-compliant, because it seems like for years now, we're always doing ramps. We did extra ramps on Washington Street, years ago, like 5 or 6 years ago, we redid the ramps on Washington Street. And so I was just sort of surprised and dismayed, I guess, by how many are not compliant. So they really changed the standards frequently, or just they made one big change and it threw a lot of things?
I don't think they've changed a lot in the last couple of years since I've started, but there was changes over the last 20 years for sure.
No, pretty much the ADA standards have been there early 2000s, maybe late 1990s. What hasn't yet happened on the federal level after 25 years is that there's still guidelines. No federal agency has actually adopted them. ODOT went ahead and adopted the guidelines, so we all go by them based on ODOT's adoption. But the actual, the truncated domes and everything you see in today's ADA ramp has been there for 20, 25 years. But they're extremely picky, and little things can make a ramp non-compliant, as much as the 6 inches of curb out in front of the truncated domes that goes to the gutter. If that's usually hand formed by the concrete crew. People don't check it really closely. So if that's put in at a gradient of greater than 2%, just below the domes, it's a non-conforming ramp. So that's all it says. So you can have little pieces of it that are non-conforming, and sometimes you got to tear the whole ramp out. Sometimes you just got to correct a little piece within the ramp to make it a conforming ramp.
Well, I would just say, when you were talking about I wanted to make sure, I guess, it's not our project, but on the RTP list, for those of you who are engaged in those conversations, I just want to make sure they don't take off the Oak Grove Lake Oswego Bridge, because there is some interest from the Lake Oswego side on re-energizing that conversation. So I was at a meeting where somebody said something about taking the bridge off, and I was like, no. But anyway, I hope that's not happening.
I don't know where that one sits because it's not on my list at this moment.
I don't believe it's within the city boundaries.
No,
No, it's not. So it's not on my list.
Keep an eye on it
It'll never
for
be on our
countywide
list.
conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll watch it.
Okay, no other questions from anyone? Well, it didn't take you an hour.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Jeff.
It's exciting about all the paving. I think people will be happy to see that happening. Okay, so then I have after the work session, council will meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.662H to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to litigation or litigation likely to be filed. And we don't have any representatives in the news media, right? So I don't need to read that paragraph, or should I go ahead? Okay. All right, with that, we will adjourn the work session.
Do you want to give people a chance to eat or grab food?
Yeah,